filibuster. And when I heard about that, I thought, gee, Jeff, you've lost your mind. I mean, you just don't change something like that. That does not change. And he was kind of that way when we served together in the state legislature. He'd take on subjects that just can't be fixed, but he would fix them. And the filibuster rule, as most of us know, has been used sparingly over the last 150 years to give the minority a better opportunity to bring the majority together with them and try to resolve things. But in the last 10 or 15 years, it's been used to stop government from functioning. And Jeff said that needed to change. And I don't know how you did it, Jeff, but that has been changed. And as a result, we're having more judges getting appointed and government functioning better. And this is a freshman senator pulled off something that others haven't been able to do for the last 30, 40, 50 years. And that's the kind of thing that Senator Merkley can do for us and has done for us, and Conley doesn't get the credit for it. I know he was a big part of bringing Wall Street bankers to heel. He really worked hard on that and put the Volcker Law back in place. We could go on and on with that, but I'm not allowed to take up that time doing it. I will say this, and this is off too. Jeff's finishing his first 6 years as a U.S. Senator. He's in his 5th year now. I can't think of another freshman senator who's been as effective as he is, and frankly, he's going to be up running for election this next fall, and we all have to make sure he gets reelected.
Yes.
I go on a lot more about it, but we haven't got time, so you got to answer the questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'd like to invite up Superintendent Phil Long and Principal Tom Sherwood of Jefferson Elementary, and Terry Dahl, the supervisor of the program we're going to be talking about. So, particularly Terry, with the help of a whole lot of other partners, have taken on a challenge, which is really to connect non-English speaking families to the educational process through a Wednesday evening gathering that brings together parents and students. That starts with a dine and discuss, in which a whole variety of issues in the community are addressed, and then proceeds to language training, either in Spanish or English, and daycare for the little kids, and STEM programs for the older kids, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And it's a whole effort to bridge a chasm that has existed for a growing population. And so for this terrific effort to take on a growing challenge and help provide success for our children in the future, we're providing this, see if I can do it with 2 hands here, a certificate of appreciation for the great work done. Pass this to all of you. And Terry, why don't you come right in the middle here. And a flag that's been flown over the U.S. Capitol. Well done.
You know, Medford School District serves 2% of the state's public schools children. That means 1 in 50 public school children is in a Medford school. And we have seen increasing growth in our Latino population, and we're thrilled that our Latino families are connecting with us at our schools and with our district office through programs like this. Terry actually volunteers. She does this beyond her job to make this happen. It's led to partnerships through Head Start with Project Listo, and we're finding other partners are coming to surround our reconnecting with families in our community. So thank you for acknowledging and recognizing this program, and we thank our community for your support of our children.
So I thought I'd share with you all a couple of things just to warm up the conversation. I'm going to be pretty brief so we have more time to discuss your comments and ideas and thoughts, questions. One thing that's happening is that on December 28th, 20,000 Oregon families lost their emergency unemployment benefits. Now recognize this was a program set up under President Bush for periods of high unemployment. So recognizing that when there are a whole lot of people seeking just a few jobs, the time it's going to take to get an additional job, the next job, is going to be longer on average. So you need a longer bridge. And right now the bridge has been 26 state weeks plus, based on our high unemployment in Oregon, an additional 37 weeks under the emergency program. And as the unemployment comes down, those weeks diminish and then disappear. So it's kind of a self-extinguishing program. Not only were 20,000 families the recipients of a lump of coal on December 28th, but another 60,000 are going to be affected in the course of this year. And the communities where these funds are spent are going to be affected because these funds go immediately into our retail outlets, our gasoline stations, our variety stores, so on and so forth. So I think it's a huge mistake for our economy and for our families, and we need to fix it. And so I've been pushing very hard that one of the first things we do next week when we get back is to work to reauthorize the emergency unemployment program. Living wage jobs really are the gold standard in terms of a foundation for a family. There's no program that can compare to that, which means we need to be spending a lot of time and effort related to our natural resources, related to manufacturing, and related to investment in infrastructure, all of which create jobs. In fact, one of the areas is certainly the retrofit, energy retrofits of buildings. We have a vast inventory of buildings in this country. I've been pushing the concept of low-cost loans for energy-saving retrofits, and a couple of years ago, former President Bill Clinton came in to the caucus, and he went on for 20 minutes about how this was the most effective job strategy that existed. And I kept trying to send him mind waves for him to say, and actually the Rural Energy Savings Program and Building Star are Senator Merkley's programs. They do exactly this. Mind waves didn't work, but the Rural Energy Savings Program has now passed the Senate twice. It is in the conference committee, and I have hopes that it will be adopted. And apart from that, the administration has taken a different loan program and remodified it to essentially start the program under existing regulations. So just stay tuned in terms of what can be done through our rural co-ops. If we think about investment in infrastructure, Europe is spending 5% of its GDP on infrastructure, and China's spending 10%. Has anyone been to China recently? Few hands. Figured so. There's a lot more connections going on. I went 10 years apart, and I was astounded by the change. I saw Beijing go from bicycles to having a 200-mile-per-hour bullet train. And that's a huge amount of investment. They're investing 10% of GDP. Here in the United States, anyone want to take a guess on how much of our GDP we invest? I see one. Anyone else? I see two. 2%. 2%. Much smaller than other industrialized nations. And we have a tremendous amount of infrastructure that is coming to the end of its life. So just repairing or extending the life of that infrastructure, let alone additional infrastructure, is a challenge. So this is good jobs in the short term and certainly preparation for a more robust economy in the future. On manufacturing, I've been doing a Made in Oregon manufacturing tour, going around the state, looking at a lot of factories, talking to a lot of CEOs, a lot of line managers, what's working and what isn't. And the things that they will mention, one they'll say is, we need help striking down non-tariff barriers for our exports. Second, financing to modernize and stay competitive is very helpful. But the thing that comes up more than anything else is shop classes. Under No Child Left Behind, shop classes were left behind. And indeed, our kids are not getting the experience of hands-on tools and the joy of making things in wood and metal shop, learning to weld, things of this nature. And that is a challenge for our manufacturing economy. I had one employer say, the good news, Senator, is I got a call this week from my national saying we need to add and expand here. This is a smaller city in Oregon, and employ 200 more people. That's great news. So the bad news is, I told them I wasn't sure we could do it, because we've been having such a hard time filling vacancies with folks who know how to use tools. So I am proposing the BUILD Act, which will help remedy this in terms of providing grant funding for programs. We also, our state legislators, I know, have been working on this here in Oregon. Peter's here, and Dr. Bates is here. So those are things we need to think about. What is working? How can we make it work better and match our workforce to some of the opportunities that exist? And in that regard, I've also been advocating for STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. So it warmed my heart to hear that the kids were doing STEM on Wednesday nights, because certainly a tremendous number of the growth industries in the world involve science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And there's ways to incorporate that into a curriculum that make it a lot more fun and engaging than the straightforward just, here's your calculus class of the past. It includes robotics competitions and a whole bunch of different ways to approach that. There are a huge number of other issues, but I'm just going to stop because otherwise we won't get as many of your thoughts. And so we're going to do this. First of all, we're going to have a question by a student. And at the end, by the way, if there is a student here, an elementary school student, and if not, a college student, who would like to ask a question, we'll close with a student question as well. And then we're going to go to tickets. And the mayor has agreed to pull these tickets and stir them up so everyone gets an equal chance. And he'll read the last 3 numbers of each ticket. He'll read 3 at a time, and that whoever raises their hand first will ask you to share the number so we can retire it, share your name, maybe what part of the county you come from, and then make your comment or your question. And if you 180 degrees radically, passionately disagree with the person who's speaking, please let them have their full say. Because we're going to turn around and when it's your turn, ask everyone to be respectful and give you the chance to speak, so that this meeting, like every meeting in America, should be a full First Amendment free speech zone. So with that,
I think we may have a student here.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question.
okay, then we're going to come to you at the end. We'll come to you for the last question, because our first question, we have a young man. Come on out. This is Matthew Mason. He's in 6th grade, and I believe, is your mom and dad? Are your mom and dad here? Your dad's here, and that's Rolando. Welcome. So glad you could come. And what would you like to ask him?
What would you like to be in 3rd grade?
Oh, what was it like for me to be in 3rd grade? It was a while ago. 3rd grade was a very good year for me. Miss Schuster was my teacher, and that was the year that I was introduced to a reading program where you read these little, I think they were called SRS or something like that, but they were short stories, and you answer a whole series of questions. And after you improved your reading to the point that you could answer the questions mostly correctly, you'd get to go to the next more complicated level of reading. And you went through violet and purple. I've seen some shaking heads. I love that because there are all these little vignettes about different issues. And there's still things that I'll go, why do I know that? Oh yeah, I know it from 3rd grade. And so that was a good year. I liked it a lot, and reading was the big thing. How are you liking 3rd grade? You like it well? And do you want to share anything else with everyone? Any particular issue you're concerned about? Thank you for coming. Mayor?
Maybe you can hear me in the back of the room, can't you? Okay, Amy? Now can you hear me in the back of the room? Amy Amrine, where are you? Do you have any more tickets for people who didn't get a ticket or lost their ticket? We do have them? Oh. Okay, I have a person who's lost a ticket. We'll get.
We need some more. We need some more.
Okay, so I'm going to call 3 ticket numbers in order. When your number is called, please stand up. Wait until somebody brings you a microphone, and then go ahead and speak. And Jeff, do you have a kind of a time target on this? 2 minutes, 3 minutes?
Be as brief as they can present their issue.
Okay, good. So we're going to try to get as many people in as possible. The numbers I have are 081, 066, and 035. Will you please stand? And put your hand up so we can get you a microphone. Okay, there.
Hi, I'm Vicki Simpson, and I'm from Ashland. And I'd like to know your stance on fracking. We know that we have climate problems, and yet we're doing things like with fracking and with tar sands that are pushing us even closer to the edge. So, and it's also sending our resources offshore instead of keeping them here.
Yeah. Would you rather concentrate on the fracking part or the tar sands part?
Fracking.
On the fracking. Okay, so fracking is a method by which shale, there's vertical drilling, then horizontal drilling, and they put explosives down there and they blow it up, and they put a solution that kind of keeps the cracks open and a lot of natural gas bubbles out. This has been the source of a huge increase in U.S. natural gas production, and it raises some significant challenges. One is for the materials that are placed, the possibility of contaminating water tables. And there is, say, Chris, can you turn that microphone off in case that's the source of this? Okay. You have, so in some cases, the people's water coming out of their wells gets contaminated so much that it's unusable. And I don't know if you've seen these videos, but various families around the nation, they turn on their water, and if they hold a match nearby, flames start coming out of their faucet because of all the natural gas following fracking that has penetrated the water table. And then you have the actual ingredients of what's been pumped in there. And there's the industry, before I was in the Senate, got a exemption to the clean water law, so they don't have to disclose any of these materials being pumped in there. And then you have a real challenge with the regulation of the well casings. And the result has been a lot of failed casings that result in more contamination, and also when the effluents are pumped out, bringing a lot of global warming methane out. So there's a whole series of challenges, and experts will say that if this is, we should close the exemption to the Clean Water Act. Well, I'll say that. We should close the exemption to the Clean Water Act. And we should be, any form of this drilling should be very carefully regulated. I'm not in a position that I would say it should be ended 100%. It may be possible to do it responsibly, but certainly right now it's being done irresponsibly in many parts of the country and creating a lot of problems. A quick follow-on, and then we'll try to get someone else in the conversation.
And then also the idea that we want to just and get a proposed pipeline, number one, wants to take gas so that it's exported. And it means that pipelines, which potentially are all across private and then we don't even benefit here from our resources.
Yes, if you couldn't hear that, and I'll just quickly summarize what you said, and then we'll give the next person a chance. But a lot of concern about the pipelines that would carry natural gas for the export market going across public and private lands, and the concerns that creates. Thank you.
Please state your number.
Yeah, share your number so we can retire it.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for taking my question. I'm Don Seabart, retired from Ashland. This is an international question, perhaps related to the previous one.
We need to know your ticket number so we can retire it.
035.
Thank you.
I would like to ask what you think our future relationships with Saudi Arabia should be. A little background. For years we got a lot of oil from the Middle East, particularly Saudi Arabia. That's not quite so true anymore. Saudi Arabia, through their radical Wahhabi groups, is promoting terrorism throughout the Middle East, killing our sons and daughters, militarily and otherwise. I wonder if we shouldn't be taking a second look at how we relate to Saudi Arabia.
So I'm not going to give you an extensive answer because I don't feel like I have the expertise to weigh in dramatically. So I'm going to kind of take to heart your thoughts. And certainly you're correct that our relationship has been deeply colored by our dependence on oil in the past. And that has not always been a good thing. But I'm not on a committee that deals directly with foreign relations, so I don't have any kind of recent input from committee hearings or so forth to share with you. But I'm just going to thank you for raising it and take your concern to heart.
Could I write you a letter and get an answer?
Yes, you could. Thank you. And by the way, anything you put in the hands of Amy Amrine, and I'll introduce her, my field representative, please feel free to put another in her hands. I want to make sure, now that I've just said you will get an answer, that try to route it through Amy. We try to answer everything. I get about 10,000 letters a week, and there's a few that slip by in the process. So,
Where's our third number? I called three numbers. You're either 081 or 066. Okay, well, yours.
Yeah, I think that mine 1166.
066.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get this man a microphone.
Thank you. My name is Roberto Morales. I just want to make a simple question. How we can able to stop dividing families and deportation? How the police can able for Interpol stopping collaboration with the INS?
let me repeat your question, make sure I got it right. How do we address the issue of the cooperation between police and the INS that results in the deportation when you have a divided family with one person legal and one person illegal? Yes. Well, the best thing for us to do is pass the national immigration bill that the Senate developed. Near term, I almost feel like I should ask if our state legislators want to kick in anything, because you have a local decisions about how the local police work with the national, and I think it varies all over the board, but it's a local decision, and so it isn't a federal framework brought to bear, if you will. And I'm happy to follow up more with you, and again, I'll connect you with Amy, because I think maybe I can think about this a little bit more and get you some more insights on it. And does anyone else want to weigh in? Any of our mayors or representatives? Anyone?
Thank you, Governor.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to read three more numbers. Please remember to give us your number before you give us your name, before you tell us where you are from, and then ask your question. The first number is 097. Are you here?
Here.
073, please answer up. Good, okay. And 015. 015? There? Okay. 097 is first.
Is this on? Yep. Hi, my name is Seldom. I live out between Rogue River and Gold Hill. And First question I have is, how many people in here are concerned about the climate change and what's happening? And I just want to thank you for what you're doing in that area, because I know I've been following it and I know you've been doing some good work. And my really personal question is, what is the probability of us really doing something to stop the rate at which climate is changing? Because once it gets past a certain point, it's irreversible. And if we screw up the environment, we're killing off the human race.
Thank you very much for the question. The first thing I want to propose is that the number 400 is one of the most significant numbers in public policy discussions. And anyone want to tell me why? Yes, indeed. It's the level of carbon pollution in the atmosphere. We've gone from 270 parts per million before the Industrial Revolution to 400. When we hit 350, do we have a loose connection or something like a team?
He might just be too far behind. That's the only thing.
Okay, so back up a little. When we hit 350, which essentially will drive more than a degree change, folks said by the time we hit 400, we need to be coming.
I don't think that wall's doing us any favor, do they?
We need to be coming back down. We need to have controlled carbon pollution enough that we're coming back. And let me use the mobile mic so that we try to see if there's a.
Try turning one or the other off.
Create carbonic acid, and that acid impinges upon the shell process. That's a harbinger of a lot of problems to come. And if we want to look at farming, I don't know what next summer will look like, but we've had 3 worst ever droughts in the last 13 years in the Klamath Basin. And if things don't change in the next couple months, we may be looking at a 4th this coming year. So the effects are here now. It is a huge challenge to the human population around the globe. We cannot sit back and say, well, we're going to wait for other nations to act. The worse it gets, the harder it is to reverse. The major sources of carbon pollution are buildings, and that's one reason why energy-saving retrofits are a really good idea, because they not only put people to work now at the best bang for the buck of anything that we could do, but they reduce the carbon pollution from buildings. A second thing is transportation. And so we should think about continuing to push, and the administration has been, on the mileage standards, on the plug-ins, on the electric cars, on the metro systems, on the bike pathways, all the things that diminish significantly our use of carbon in transportation. There's a lot can become on the trucking and as well. And then power generation. Power generation is the third main source of carbon pollution. We need to bring all of the older coal plants up to the best available technology, or shut them down. And those things are things that are underway right now, but we need to push much more aggressively. I have noticed that our New England legislators have taken a turn towards elevating this on their list of concerns following Hurricane Sandy. I had the experience last year. I decided it was time to try some middle-age exercise, so I decided I'd do a series of triathlons and try to do an Ironman distance triathlon. And so last October, just over a year ago, I tried this triathlon, and it was in North Carolina in the ocean. And I went out with the first group to get ready, and the person in front of me walked into the ocean and said, "Folks, this is incredibly warm. Come on in." And I'm thinking 62 degrees. It can't be that warm. And that was what we were told it would be. I walked in the ocean at 72 degrees. 1 week later, Hurricane Sandy, fueled by this warmer water, stormed ashore in the Northeast. So different parts of the world are going to experience this in different ways. We cannot let our children who understand the dimension of this challenge better than their parents do, we cannot wait until they are decision makers down the road. This needs to be elevated in our concern, and we need to push on multiple fronts simultaneously and keep educating folks about it. Thanks. The short answer on a carbon tax or cap and trade, we made a big push, and that is not going to happen in the near term. But these three areas, by focusing on them, we can get the same reductions we would have gotten under cap and trade. And so I'm encouraging folks to really focus on the measures that are doable right now while we ponder state strategies and regional strategies. Of course, different states and regions are starting to do things like a carbon tax and or a cap and trade scenario. And but at the federal level right now, it's pushing in those three areas specifically that we can make a difference.
Number 073. Are you here?
I'm 073.
Where are you, 073? Stand up, please. Oh, there you are, back there.
So again, anybody concerned with climate change, if I could get up and stand up, please. All right. Hi, Senator. My name's Ben. I'm a volunteer with Pro Climate, and we support realistic climate change legislation. In the state legislative session in 2015, we're looking to see if we can get a carbon tax through. So this is a follow-up on what you were just speaking about. The purpose is to use economic forces to show our need to respond to climate change, and we would like to get fuel companies, utilities, and others to pay this carbon fee. And to follow up on the previous question, he was asking about realistic change, and maybe you could enlighten us further on why a carbon tax is potentially not realistic at a national level, whether you think it's realistic at a state level.
Yes. So at a national level, there's no chance of something like that passing through the House of Representatives, and a very modest chance in the Senate. And if you want to think about part of the challenge of big money in politics, the Koch brothers, with wanting to burn every bit of coal and oil that exists in the universe as quickly as possible for their private profits, are putting vast resources into the political system, which introduces a whole nother conversation about citizens united and the corrosive and corrupting influence of vast sums of money that we have to address in order to reclaim our democracy.
Here, here. Great segue.
But I think your conversation about student activism and about going to the state level fits in with what I'm saying. There are certain things can be done at the federal level, and I'm going to be pushing on all of those, and there's other conversations that can be taken up at the more local level. And again, I'll invite, do you want to say anything, Peter, about the local?
We're behind 100%. We appreciate the activity of the climate solutions folks have done, as well as climate action people. The base we worked on in 2015.
Okay.
The next person is ticket number 15015. Are you here?
He's right here.
Okay.
Hi, thank you for... This is on?
Turn the mic off for a second, see if it's causing the interference.
Yeah,
Speak loudly.
Go ahead.
Good. There we go. Thank you for your time, sir. The biggest thing I've seen an issue with is money in politics. It's a very big problem with it. Our voices aren't heard. Your own campaign contributions tell us how you're going to vote. I looked at yours last night before I came here, and I can tell you that you're going to push climate change. I can tell you that you're going to push energy because of certain corporations that fund you personally. We don't have a voice. You can sit here and listen to us all day long, but until you guys get the money out of politics, why are you talking to us?
So let's talk a little bit about this. First, I disagree with your premise. because I ran on the things I believe in, and I fight for the things I believe in, and I hope people who agree will help me stay in office. Otherwise, someone representing different views will be there. But indeed, there are a couple things that can be done right now that don't require any legislation to be passed. The first is the Security Exchange Commission could say that every owner of a company has a right to know how that company spends its political money. It seems to me if you're an owner, you should get to know. If you have stock in a company, you should get to know how they spend their political money. Instant transparency. It can be done by a regulatory agency. The second is, a process has developed over the last few years where folks have developed the art of utilizing the social welfare structure for politics. And specifically the way it works is this. The law says that a social welfare organization must use its funds exclusively, and the word in the law is exclusively, for social welfare. Now the IRS regulation, when it was written years ago, decided to leave some wiggle room, only left a lot more than wiggle room, and it says, in the regulation, it says exclusively means primarily. That sentence is the most Orwellian sentence. It changed 100% standard in the law to a 50.1% standard. Now, I think the IRS should rewrite its regulation to match the law. Now, there are folks who disagree with me. There are folks on the left and on the right who both use this because their donors want to be anonymous, and they want anonymous money to flow into politics. But I don't think you can be half for transparency. You can't be for transparency on this side of the spectrum and not on the other side. So we should close that. We should close that loophole. We should change that regulation, and that would be the two significant things that can be done right now. Beyond that, we had a bill that was all about transparency in political donations. And we needed 60 votes to close debate. We got 59 votes twice, and we couldn't get the 60th vote. And now we couldn't even get close to 59 if we were to try. You have this host of legislators who said during the McCain-Feingold debate years ago, they were against limits, but they were all for disclosure and transparency. And then when the disclosure and transparency conversation came, they said, well, we're not for that either. And so it is going to be, in the short term, we're not going to get the Disclose Act passed. We're not, in the short term, going to get a constitutional change to change Citizens United. Now think about the type of money that Citizens United unleashed. If Exxon was to spend 6% of their net revenues in 2012 on the presidential race, so 1 out of every $20 of net profit, or slightly more than $1 out of 20, they would have spent more on the U.S. presidential race than every other entity combined in the United States of America. Citizens, companies, everyone else. That's one company, one boardroom, exercising fabulous amounts of political power. And if you think about that money being exercised in judicial races on the state level, being exercised in Senate races, in congressional races, and governor's races, I completely disagree with the 5-member majority of the Supreme Court who did a finding in Citizens United that said vast sums of money are not corrosive or corrupting to the political system.
Okay, we have 3 more numbers. The first number is 074. Are you here? Okay. The next number is 095. Are you here? 095. The third number is 099. That's you?
No,
Okay, so you're 095. 099. Are you here? That's you. Okay. All right, let's start with 074.
Okay, I know you're aware of the pipeline. Oh, my number is 074. I know you're aware of the pipeline that's going to go to the coast and create a terminal in Coos Bay. And I'm very concerned because there's a huge subduction zone right off of our coast. It is capable of creating an earthquake and tsunami similar to what they had in Japan. And I was wondering if you're also concerned.
So you're absolutely right about there's a whole series of faults that were, I guess you might say, geologists say, we're overdue for a major fault, and communities are doing a tremendous amount of planning related to that. Normally I hear this raised in the context of buildings, and but you've now framed it in terms of pipelines. I don't know what the safety measures are in terms of automatic shutdown and so forth. So you've raised it in a new dynamic, and I'll be happy to look into that or follow up with any information you have on it. It makes sense. I know that, for example, when San Francisco burned in its earthquake, right, gas lines were torn apart, and the gas created a lot of fires. But I haven't heard this in the context of delivery pipelines. But happy to look at it. Okay, thank you.
Now we have number 095.
My name is Susan Rizzo, and I work for the Public Health Department here at the County Public Health Department, and for the last 2 years I've been exploring climate change and health, and I left a report for you, and I think you know most of the stuff that's in it from what you've said about climate change, and thank you for being so educated. I just don't think you can give up on the carbon tax. It doesn't matter that it's not going to pass right away. It just doesn't matter. If it's the most important thing to the survival of the planet, then we have to keep working on it. And can I want to say one more thing locally about forest restoration? If you could possibly work with Wyden and improve that forest act that he's got, the answer is not cutting bigger trees. The answer is a healthy forest.
Susan, thank you. I'll look forward to your report. It's in the health context you mentioned, so appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, we have one more time for.
Yes, certainly. I'm deeply engaged in the conversation with Senator Wyden's team. He's taking a lot of input. I'm taking input from various sources. If any particular group wants to sit down and meet, I've been meeting with groups, and I want to talk to everyone about it so I can be as informed as possible and wrestling with the nitty-gritty details that are embedded in the bill.
Staff tells me, Senator, that we have one more ticketed speaker, and then we have a student here. And that speaker is 099. You were here just a minute ago. That's you. Oh, okay. That's okay.
I am in first grade.
So good to have you come. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Is there anything in particular you'd like to share or ask about?
Have you ever been inside the place that they make the money?
You know, that's a great question, and it'd be fascinating to see it. I've been doing this Made in Oregon manufacturing tour, and unfortunately none of the money is made in Oregon, or I would have gotten to see it. But the short answer is no. But my grandmother Daisy, my father's mother, worked in a mint way back when in the early 1900s. So there's a little family history, but I haven't had the chance to see it. Thank you. Thanks so much. And so I'm going to close and then invite anyone who wants to come up and as long as I'm on road to Eugene in time, I'll talk with you all as long as I can. The issues you have raised are extremely important. One of the issues I don't think anyone raised today was NSA. And so I just wanted to mention briefly that I'm very, very concerned about the overreach of federal government into our privacy. Senator Wyden has been serving on intelligence and raising these issues for many, many years. He has a comprehensive bill that I'm co-sponsoring. But there is a piece of it that I was championing last year that essentially said, look, you cannot have a secret court issue secret interpretations of the law, and citizens and legislators don't even know, therefore, what the law is. And yet that's exactly what was happening with the FISA court. You had the Supreme Court justice selecting a judge to hear an issue. The advocacy about that issue came only from one side of the issue, that is from the federal government side. You had no one else there to argue the opposite side. And the opinions saying what the law meant were secret. So I was calling for those to be declassified. I had an amendment on this that Senator Feinstein opposed at the time, saying we couldn't. This is a year ago from last December. And saying that we couldn't have a bill that didn't match the House bill. But she agreed to work with me, and so we proceeded to do a letter afterwards to the administration asking them to declassify these opinions. They have largely since done so, but we've got to keep pushing. You know, the law is the plain language plus the interpretation of it. And there are all these standards in Section 215 of the Patriot Act that say these standards have to be met before information from Americans is collected. And so I asked the head of the NSA at a committee hearing. I pulled out my cell phone and I said, okay, so the standards require there to be a connection to concern about connection to a terrorist group and so forth. What information have you collected that led you to reach the conclusion that you could collect my cell phone information under those standards set in 215? And he said, well, he'd have to consult a lawyer. I mean, essentially, we now have a federal judge who has said that the collections are unconstitutional. We have another federal judge higher up who said they're not. I assume that will go to the Supreme Court be argued, but regardless of where the Supreme Court comes out, through the legislative process, we can constrain what's going on. So I'm going to continue to work with Senator Wyden in order to keep taking on this issue of our privacy from our own government. Thank you all so much for participating, because there are very few senators left that hold town halls. This is enormously valuable to me. This is my 187th town hall as a U.S. Senator. And the themes that are raised in various ways throughout all of the different communities in Oregon provide a voice in my head that gives me a sense of how issues are resonating and what we need to work on. And by the way, no one raised health care, so I just want to say very quickly that some tremendous things have happened that I think have been, let me see if I've got the card here, just a second. So these are things that have happened to date here in Oregon. More than 20,000 Oregonians have received rebates under the 80% rule, where 80% of the premiums have to now be spent on actual health care services. More than 30,000 Oregonians have saved money from the beginning of the effort to close the donut hole under the Drug Act. Over 40,000 of young Oregonians, 19 through 25, have gained coverage through the ability to stay on their parents' policy from age 19 through 26. Over 900,000 Oregonians have received free preventative care, which this is the basic notion we heard as kids. Ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. 1.3 million Oregonians no longer are subject to lifetime or annual limits. 1.6 million Oregonians would potentially have pre-existing conditions that would disqualify them from being able to get insurance on their own, and now they don't have to worry about that possibility. And so that's just some of the things that have been changing. We have a state website written by Oracle that has done a terrible job. And we've been reduced to using paper instead. I'm applying through Cover Oregon. I'm still waiting to hear from whether or not they got my information on the company I applied to for health coverage, and where do I send my check, if you will. This will get straightened out. The state will continue to work with Oracle. There will be a functioning website in the future, but let us not return to a situation where citizens can be thrown off their insurance when you get sick, or you cannot get insurance to begin with because you have a pre-existing condition, where we don't emphasize prevention, and where citizens don't have the advantage of being part of a group to get a fair price. Thank you.